The Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance join in the worldwide commemoration of Yom Hashoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day 2021. Thank you for joining our program. This year's theme is the pursuit of justice, as it is the 75th anniversary of the Nuremberg Trials, which began in the fall of 1945 and continued for 293 subsequent days. The first international war crimes tribunal in history, it revealed the true extent of German atrocities and held some of the most prominent Nazis accountable for their crimes. 75 years later, the opening statement for the prosecution, delivered by American Supreme Court Justice and U.S. Chief of Counsel Justice Robert H. Jackson, remains one of the most significant and one of the most often cited affirmations on the role and responsibility of international law and human rights. Justice Jackson began, "The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored, because it cannot survive their being repeated." The pursuit of justice, not vengeance, became the mantra and life's work of the namesake of our organization, Simon Wiesenthal. We shall see a short film clip of the Nuremberg Trials from the Simon Wiesenthal Center's Moriah Films Academy Award-winning documentary, Genocide, and learn more about Wiesenthal's quest for justice from Moriah Films' documentary, I Have Never Forgotten You, later in the program, following keynote remarks by Rabbi Marvin Heyer, founder and dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and a special message from the President of the State of Israel, Reuven Rivlin. The program also includes greetings from the chair of the California Legislative Caucus, Jesse Gabriel, and concludes with an historic rendition of the memorial prayer by the famous cantor Moshe Kusevitsky, recorded not long after the Holocaust. As we remember the valor and martyrdom of the victims of the Shoah, we also recognize and appreciate the courage of the survivors. Featured throughout our program are tributes to the many Holocaust survivors who for over 3 decades have volunteered their time at the Museum of Tolerance to speak about their experiences during World War II. They have educated and inspired millions of visitors, many of them middle and high school students, and continue to do so on a regular basis, nowadays via virtual platforms, until the museum can safely reopen. They are witnesses to history and the most effective ambassadors of memory, action, faith, and hope.
We are now in the 75th anniversary of Nuremberg. One of the most remarkable stories that was written in a book by a psychiatrist, Leon Goldenson, who basically wrote a book about the criminals in Nuremberg that were tried in Nuremberg. And he tells the story, which is quite remarkable, of his interview with Hoss, the commandant of Auschwitz. And the story he tells is as follows. He came in, he interviewed him, and he asked him a question. Where'd you live during that time? And Hoss said, I lived on the camp grounds at Auschwitz. And Goldenson said, and your wife and children live there as well? He said, yes. He said, did your wife know anything about what was happening at Auschwitz? And so Huss replies to Goldenson, well, what happened is, in the beginning, she didn't know. Then she spoke to some of the SS officers, and they told her. She refused to believe it. But on another occasion, when another officer brought it to her attention, she was shocked. And so Goldenson said, so what did she think? So she thought that it was a horrible thing. But then I explained to her, it was either them or us. And so Goldenson then continued to say as follows, how did you live a normal life on the campgrounds where 1,500,000, at least 1,500,000 Jews and non-Jews were gassed, and you lived there? And he said basically that it was he wasn't responsible for any of the deaths of these 1,500,000. He was just the director of the extermination program. And in other words, he says, I had nothing to do with it. All I did is I directed the program that murdered 1,500,000 innocent human beings. And then Goldenson wanted to know, how did you spend your time? Did you listen to music? He said, yes. Did you read the papers or a magazine? And Haas said, yes. And he said, did you read the Stürmer, for example? And Haas began laughing. He said, the Stürmer? I would never allow my family to read a newspaper like that. He said, why not? He said, it's full of propaganda and lies. And so he said, you wouldn't allow the Stürmer in your house, but you allowed the murder of 1,500,000 innocent human beings, of which you were the director? And Huss just had no answer to that question. And then the other thing that is remarkable about this kind of an answer that the Nazis gave, that they were not responsible. Most people do not know that in 1945, weeks before the war ended, Heinrich Himmler, the Gestapo chief, met secretly meaning he didn't tell Hitler about the meeting, with a member of the World Jewish Congress. During the discussion with the member of the World Jewish Congress, Himmler basically said, look, we had to kill them. The reason we had to kill them is they were all infected with diseases. If we wouldn't have killed them, we would have died ourselves. So the representative of the World Jewish Congress said to him, but isn't it true that you injected their blood? You had SS officers take their blood, which you claim was contaminated, and you re-injected it into SS officers. So it couldn't very well be that what you're saying is that basically that you would never have killed a single human being if it wasn't for the fact that they were all carrying terrible infectious diseases, But infectious diseases didn't bother you from extracting blood from the innocent men, women, and children and giving it to the SS guards who murdered them. That was the infamous lies that the Nazis told. But the most remarkable thing of it all is they didn't just take out a gun and shoot somebody. They didn't. When you do that, you don't know whether how the person feels afterwards. But we do know from Goldenson's report that every night the SS officers, including Horst and his wife, listened to concerts. They listened to music, while on the same grounds, a block or two away, at the most, a block or two away, the gassing continued every single day for years. That's what we should remember about the anniversary of the Nuremberg Trials, that human beings were capable of behaving like human beasts.
On the 8th of May, 1945, Germany surrendered.
In all our long history, we have never seen a greater day than this. God bless you all.
We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe's Day.
As the bells of victory rang out over liberated Europe, thousands of Nazis were arrested. Trials began of those accused of crimes against humanity. Most of those accused denied their guilt.
Hermann Wilhelm Göring. Bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage nicht schuldig. Rudolf Hess.
Nein.
That will be entered as a plea of not guilty. Joachim von Ribbentrop.
Ich bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage für nicht schuldig.
Wilhelm Keitel.
Ich bekenne mich nicht schuldig.
Alfred Rosenberg.
Ich bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage nicht für schuldig.
Hans Frank.
Ich bekenne mich nicht für schuldig.
Wilhelm Frick.
Nicht schuldig.
Julius Streicher.
Nicht schuldig.
We did not know. We were following orders. We were only small cogs, bureaucrats doing our jobs. Eichmann said that when he was tried and hanged in 1961. 3 of those responsible for the deportations from France to Auschwitz argued the same when they were brought to trial in Cologne in the autumn of 1979. Surely Dr. Josef Mengele, the infamous angel of death, responsible for the death and torture of 400,000 people, would say no less if he were found.
Good evening. I'm Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel. I'm proud to represent the West San Fernando Valley in the California Legislature and to serve as chair of the California Legislative Jewish Caucus. It's an honor to be with you this evening, and I'm deeply grateful to Rabbi May and the visionary leadership of the Simon Wiesenthal Center for their essential service to our community. Although we can't be together in person tonight, the sacred work of remembering the Holocaust is more important than ever. In too many places, and for too many young people, the Holocaust is fading from view. At the same time, anti-Semitism is rising in the United States and around the globe. So are other forms of hatred and bigotry, including against the Asian American community. Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism can now be amplified through social media with stunning efficiency. In the face of these challenges, our mandate is clear. We must meet ignorance with education. We must meet hatred with pride. We must teach our children and the children of all backgrounds about the horrors of the Holocaust and the enduring resilience of the Jewish people. We must uplift the extraordinary bravery of those who survived the Shoah. We must meet baseless hatred with boundless love. We must be a light unto the nations. Organizations like the Museum of Tolerance are indispensable to this effort. They provide an essential service to our community and to diverse communities across the state of California. Our Jewish Caucus is proud to support their work, and we are committed to working closely with the museum and with all of you to overcome ignorance and bigotry of all forms. Together we can build a stronger community, a more just world, and a better future for all of our children.
leaders, friends and supporters of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the Museum of Tolerance, as we mark 75 years to the Nuremberg Trials, I salute, in the name of the State of Israel, the legacy of Simon Wiesenthal. Simon embodied the biblical command of tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. He dedicated his life to pursuing justice for the victims of the Holocaust and the entire Jewish people all around. And he will be forever thankful. Over the last 7 years, I made everything as the President of the State of Israel to fulfill the sacred duty of preserve the memory of the Holocaust and to combat all forms of Holocaust denial. There are many reasons to be optimistic, but there is still much to be done. Last year, just before the pandemic, I hosted a historic gathering of some 50 world leaders who came here to Jerusalem to strengthen our shared commitment to Holocaust remembrance and education and our shared determination to combat all forms of anti-Semitism, hatred, and racism. In January this year, we saw moving International Holocaust Day ceremonies which included, for the first time, young leaders from the UAE, Bahrain, and across all of the Middle East. And just last month, I met with the President of Germany, Austria, and France, and discussed ways to ensure that the lesson of the Holocaust are never forgotten. Yet, while there are many reasons to be optimistic, there are also reasons to be concerned, very much concerned. The next generation will have fewer and fewer opportunities to hear directly from the Holocaust survivors. Holocaust distortion and denial is increasing in parts of the world, and we are seeing anti-Semitism from the left and from the right, spreading once again on the streets, online, and even in the halls of power. Friends, today on Yom Hashoah, we must stand united and demand with one voice zero tolerance for any more of anti-Semitism and any form of anti-Semitism and racism and hatred, no matter what the source. 76 years after the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, we must renew our commitment to work together to preserve the memory of the Holocaust, fight anti-Semitism, and ensure that our shared promise of never again become a shared reality. Thank you. Thank you very much, and may God bless all of you. Toda Rabba.
Ich wusste selber nicht, was mit meinem Leben anzufangen. Und ich hatte niemanden, für den ich hätte leben wollen. Die Spannung war vorbei, ich habe überlebt und erst dann merkte ich, wie ich alleine bin.
As far as Simon knew, he was the only survivor in his family. His wife and all of his relatives had been murdered. He was now a free man. But what did freedom mean?
Ich höre, das Lager ist geöffnet und man kann bekommen einen Durchlassschein, um wieder hineinzukommen. Wie gesagt, so ein Durchlassschein, das ist ja ein Beweis, dass ich frei bin.
The man the Americans put in charge of granting the permits was a former Polish prisoner, Kazimierz Rusinek, who later became known as a leading propagandist in communist Poland.
Er schaut mich an, fragt er, was willst du hier? Du Muselmann. Muselmann hat man ja genannt, die Häftlinge, die bald oder vergast oder ins Krematorium kommen. Er hat mich polnisch gefragt. Er sagte, du brauchst einen Durchlassschein? Wenn die Nazis noch 2 Tage wären, hier, da wärst du ja durchs Kamin gegangen. Da hat er mir einen Stoß gegeben und hat mich herausgeprügelt bis auf das Gras zwischen den Baracken. Ich wurde soeben befreit. Vor 2 Tagen habe ich gesehen, die Amerikaner im Tank. Und jetzt schlägt man mich noch? Wofür?
The following day, Wiesenthal decided to see Colonel Richard Seibel, the commanding officer at Mauthausen, to file a formal complaint against Rusinek, the man who had beaten him. While he waited, he witnessed a sight in an adjacent office that amazed him.
Und dort kam ich und habe gesehen, man führt hinein SS-Männer kettet und ehemalige Häftlinge verhören sie und es sind Amerikaner dabei. Und auf einmal öffnet sich für mich etwas, dass ich mir sagte, ach, das ist der Zipfel der Gerechtigkeit. Und habe gesagt, kann ich noch hier bleiben? Nimmt mich auf, ich kann euch helfen. Ich tat ihnen leid. Da kommt einer jeden Tag halbtot und sagt, er will was machen. Ich sage, du sagst, du weißt so viel. Schreib auf.
Wiesenthal sat down and composed a list of 91 Nazi war criminals. It contained the names of such infamous SS criminals as Friedrich Katzmann, the SS Major General who ran the murder machine in the Ukraine, behind the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of Jews; Amnon Gert, the commandant of the Plaszow death camp, responsible for the murders of thousands of others, as well as many lesser-known criminals. The document was unprecedented for its time, striking in its detail, not only listing names and ranks of the perpetrators, but specific dates and vivid descriptions of their crimes.
Also ich habe nicht ganze 100 amerikanische Pfund, also 45 Kilo, aber ich glaube, ich habe jeden Tag mindestens 1 Kilo zugenommen. Sie verstehen mich, nicht nur, weil ich Essen hatte, aber ich wollte gesund werden. Ich habe die ganze Zeit gedacht an dieses Büro.
But the officers of the War Crimes Unit did not see Simon's involvement with them as anything long-term. They tried to convince him that it was time to start rebuilding his life.
You see what you are. You are an architect. Yes. Okay, we will send you to a sanitary and later you will go home and build houses again. Build houses? I say to him, you think you can continue in the same place that the life was interrupted? We have not only lost people and houses, we have lost everything, every believing.
Simon Wiesenthal now embarked on a career that would define the rest of his life.